Good morning and welcome to worship, those of you that are joining us at home. We had a chance this morning to celebrate our September birthdays and anniversaries. If you're on our email list, you got those sent out this week. We'll be sure and celebrate with those people. And we went over a few joys and concerns as well. Encourage you to keep us apprised of all the things that are going on in your life. Um, this morning I'd like to start off, I've just been waiting for this morning all week. I've been watching the weather forecast, and I knew how just absolutely glorious it was going to be, assuming the walnuts were not hazardous to our health. But I'd like to invite you into just a moment of silence and just kind of quiet meditation. The week has felt kind of heavy to me. I don't know about you, but there just seems, there's been a lot of stuff going on for a long time, but with the hurricane and additional things going on in our country, it just seemed like a good time to just really sit and enjoy God's presence, to enjoy nature, and to feel the support and presence and love of the community gathered around us. So if you would just join me in a moment of silence, I'll do a spoken prayer, and then we'll do the Lord's Prayer together, and then we'll move on to scripture and text. If just take advantage of the quiet. Praise the new day, the gift of the source of all being, the breath of life, the soul of the universe. Let us cherish the moments and sanctify the hours, blessings, joys, honoring the tears, lifting our hearts in song, raising our voices in thanksgiving, to magnify faith and practice acceptance, to offer consolation and to seek wisdom, to become a well of healing, a beacon of kindness, a source of forgiveness, a light of wonder and wisdom, soul of the universe, breath of life, source of all being. We praise the new day. This is a gift of holiness and love. We offer these prayers and we offer our silence in the name and the spirit of the one who taught us to pray, our Father, who art in heaven. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. If you do not have a regular practice of just doing what we just did, just for a minute or two, of just sitting and being quiet, inside or out, let me highly encourage that. And as the silence becomes more comfortable for you, which it will over time, allow those times to stretch out and to realize that that is the purest form of prayer, of just sitting with someone. If you have someone in your life, or the people that you have in your life that you feel ultimately comfortable with and you feel closest to, those are the people that you can just sit with, right? And not have to talk and not have to do anything, but just be with them. And that's the kind of relationship that we seek and that God seeks for us with him, if that makes sense. All right, week 2 of Exodus and Moses. So last week we did just the first section, the birth story of Moses, the kind of prequel, the things that were happening in Egypt, and the story of him in the basket on the Nile River and being rescued by the daughter of Pharaoh. His sister's involved. His mother is allowed to help nurse him and raise him as a baby, at least. We don't know how long. So we're in chapter 2 of Exodus. We pick up the story. One day after Moses had become an adult, he went out among his people, and he saw their forced labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. He looked around to make sure no one else was there. Then he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. When Moses went out the next day, he saw 2 Hebrew men fighting with each other. Moses said to the one who had started the fight, "Why are you abusing your fellow Hebrew?" The man replied, "Who made you a boss or judge over us? Are you planning to kill me like you killed the Egyptian?" Birds, would you hold it down, please? Then Moses was afraid when he realized they obviously know what I did. When Pharaoh heard about it, he tried to kill Moses. But Moses ran away from Pharaoh and lived and settled down in the land of Midian. One day Moses was sitting by a well. Now there was a Midian priest who had 7 daughters. The daughters came to draw water and fill the troughs so that their father's flock could drink. But some shepherds came along and rudely chased them away. Moses got up, rescued the women, and gave their flock water to drink. When they went back to their father Reuel, he asked, "How are you able to come back home so soon today?" They replied, "An Egyptian man rescued us from a bunch of shepherds. Afterward, he even helped us draw water to let the flock drink." Reuel said to his daughter, "So where is he? Why did you leave this man? Invite him to eat a meal with us." Moses agreed to come and live with the man who gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses as his wife. She gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, because he said, I've been an immigrant living in a foreign land." A long time passed, and the Egyptian king died. The Israelites were still groaning because of their hard work. They cried out, and their cry was to be rescued from the hard work. And their cry to be rescued from the hard work rose up to God. God heard their cry of grief, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God looked at the Israelites, and God understood. So if you would take just a minute, I wasn't going to do the pages, but I guess I am now. And think about all the images, all the stories, all of the things you've seen in books or Sunday school or movies about Moses as a young man. And just kind of hold those up for a minute. I've been doing that this week. I watched 3 Moses movies this week. Not the whole thing, I didn't watch all 3 of them because I started to get confused. I didn't get too far down the story. But I watched The Prince of Egypt, wonderful animated film, Steven Spielberg, and DreamWorks in, I had the year somewhere, 1998. College roommate of mine helped work on this project. I think I've told that story. I will tell it again soon because it's so good, why not tell it again? I watched the first part of Exodus, Gods and Kings. I've talked about this one too. This one has the creepy British boy, is Andrea in it here, that I was making fun of. Right when I first got here at the church, I was talking about the creepy British boy, and then I remembered that my friend Andrea Beale was sitting there with her lovely British accent, and I felt bad. But anyway, this is Christian Bale as Moses. It's kind of, it's Ridley Scott is the director, so this is like Gladiator Moses, right? Okay, so that's that one. A lot of action and a lot of stuff. Christian Bale is kind of dark, brooding. And then I watched, speaking of Andrea, she let me borrow this after that. I did not watch the 10 Commandments, the Charlton Heston version, because I think I know that one inside and out. I did watch the 10 Commandments, the musical. This exists. Val Kilmer stars as Moses. It's 2004. Adam Lambert of what did he win? The Voice? American Idol. Adam Lambert, who now is the lead singer for Queen, stars as Joshua. Doesn't star, but has a role as Joshua. It is. Oh, I could talk so much about this show, and you will hear more about it in the weeks to come, I think, because it's a fascinating look at this story. Here's just my quick observations from today. In the Ten Commandments, the musical, everyone except Pharaoh and Moses are under the age of 30. They are extremely fit. They are all trained, talented dancers, and neither the Hebrews or the Egyptians wear a lot of clothing. So if you want to watch it, that's up to you. There's fantastic singing. The voice talent in the show is really remarkable throughout the cast. It's pretty catchy music. It kind of gets your attention. If this makes any sense to you, it's Exodus with a backbeat. So, do I need to explain that? So, a backbeat is when a drummer is hitting 2 and 4. It's kind of like rock and roll Exodus, okay? And some kind of interesting special effects. But it's just a film of the stage show. So and there's a live audience, and you get to see what would happen. So we'll get back to that one anyway. So I didn't watch the traditional Ten Commandments. I already know that story pretty much. But here's what I noticed about all 4 of those movies, and also what I know about stories about Moses growing up in the books and all those things, is all of them focused on the relationship between Moses and the person that's named Ramses, right? Who is probably the wrong person historically. So we can't date the Moses and Exodus story exactly. We think it's around, scholars think it's around 1200 BC, and they base that on the fact that there was a pharaoh named Ramses. There were towns named Pithom and Ramses that were being built in kind of northeast Egypt. But it doesn't work out exactly. So we can't, and there's no real story about Moses or the Hebrew people in the historical record outside of the Bible. But Moses and this person that eventually becomes the Pharaoh, they would not have been brothers, or they would not have grown up together, I don't think, because if you think about it, if Moses, here, got to go through the math here. If Moses is adopted by Pharaoh's daughter, and the character known as Ramses is Pharaoh's son, who will eventually become Pharaoh, then that's his uncle, right? Now, might they have been close in age? Sure, they might have been. I'm fairly close. I'm closer in age to some of my nieces and nephews than I am to some of my siblings, so that it might have happened. But, or maybe they were cousins. Maybe anyway, were they brothers? We don't know, but the movies think they do. The Prince of Egypt, on the cover of the movie, says, "The extraordinary tale of 2 brothers, one born of royal blood, one an orphan with a secret past." The musical thing says, when a Hebrew baby raised as a brother to the Egyptian prince learns of his true origins. So we really, really, really want them to be brothers. In the musical version of it, they take their curtain call together. Like the Red Sea thing, this happens, all right? The Red Sea thing happens, all of Pharaoh's soldiers die, but somehow he survives, and they have a moment together and sing a duet, even though they have been trying to kill each other. And, Val Kilmer gets the last bow, of course, but then he calls up then they do their bow together, everybody smiling and waving, even though there's been slavery for 400 years and a bunch of people just died. But it's a musical, so that's how things end. And in the movie Exodus, the Christian Bale movie, the Pharaoh gives the 2 young men swords that have each other's names on them. So, and he says, "I want you to always remember when you draw your weapon that you're protecting your brother." Anyway. In all these movies, Moses is seen as a great general, a military general. In the Charlton Heston movie, he goes and fights the Ethiopians. In the Christian Bale movie, he goes and fights the Hittites, which is probably more historically accurate. That we think that those cities that they were building in northeast Egypt were to protect from an invasion of the Hittites, who would have come in from the east side. And of course, Moses and Ramses end up we'll just call him Ramses, whatever his name was, as this friendship and rivalry at the same time. So it's not just us, and then they're building the cities, right? So we see them out, and they're working with they're correcting the architects, right? They're correcting the people who spend their whole life doing math on how to build a pyramid on, I think you put that stone in the wrong place. Well, so these guys are both just brilliant, amazing human beings, which they probably were. And this is not just us. The ancient rabbinic writings that start in the time after the destruction of the temple in the early part of this millennium, they tell the same kind of stories about Moses. They tell of a war with the Ethiopians. So what do we really, really know about Moses' life in Egypt? Well, I just read it to you. Here's what we know about Moses' life in Egypt after he was a baby. One day, after Moses had become an adult, that's it. That is the entire biblical record on what happened to Moses from the time he was a baby floating in the Nile River to when he was an adult. One day, after Moses had become an adult, he went out among his people and he saw their forced labor. He has the altercation with the Egyptian and then flees or is forced out. The movies make that a big dramatic thing about him being banished and the name of Moses shall be stricken from it, right? In Charlton Heston version, the name of Moses shall never be said again. They probably didn't know the name of Moses. So anyway, so there's some discrepancy between what we have in the biblical story and what we have in our popular culture. And not just us, right? This has been happening for 2,000 years. People have been adding to the story. So my question for you today is why? Why do we want him to be a prince of Egypt? Why do we want Moses to be friends or rivals with the Pharaoh? Why do we want Moses to be a great military leader? Why do we want Moses to be brilliant and be able to solve architectural problems? I have no idea. And I've been working on this all week. But here are some thoughts. So first of all, I'm not blaming the storytellers, because I think the storytellers are only telling us things that they know that the stories wouldn't last if we didn't want to, right? If people had gone to the Ten Commandments, the Cecil B. DeMille story, and if they had stomped out after a half hour saying, that is not biblically accurate, it would not have been, it wouldn't be played every year on Passover, right? We wouldn't keep making these movies, because we want to hear these stories. So here's some thoughts. What are the actual influences on his life that are ignored or downplayed? His birth mother. His Hebrew mother who raised him as a baby. We don't know how long that he was with her, but we all know the psychologists and therapists tell us that first bonding experience of being with mother is so important. So whatever influence she had on his life was certainly significant. His adopted mother, the daughter of Pharaoh, again, raised him. We don't know what kind of relationship we have. We do have some insight into the relationship with his father-in-law, jumping way ahead. So in this text that I read today, he's named Ruel. I probably mispronounced that. It's much easier to call him Jethro, which is his name later in Exodus. And he's always referred to as father-in-law or the Midianite priest. Midian was a group of people and also an area. So not too far from Egypt, actually, northwest Sinai Peninsula. So when he fled, got kicked out of Egypt, traveled east, would have run into the Midianites who lived in Midian, strangely enough. And they, we believe, worshipped, or the text pretty clear, worshipped Yahweh, worshipped the same God, and Yahweh's not Yahweh yet. That'll be next week. So the Midianite priest, the holy man who gave his daughter to Moses in marriage, has some significant influence on his life. We see a few stories about him. We'll look at one of them down the road. His wife. His wife Zipporah. So we'll talk about that in a minute. What about his actual brother? His real actual brother, Aaron, who is completely ignored in these stories. Like he got the 5th or 6th curtain call in the end of the musical, right? That's how you know who's important in the show, the people who come out last. So he comes out with the minor characters and lines up 3 or 4 of them, gets 2 solos or something. So Aaron gets totally ignored in the musical. Is he even in the other movies? Spoiler alert. Moses is 80 years old when he goes back to Egypt to save the slaves. 80. 8-0. His brother is 83. I forgot to double check that, but he's a few years older. He's 80. He is not 35-year-old Val Kilmer who still won't wear a shirt. Right? He is an older man, and he has some kind of speech impediment. The text says he is not a confident speaker. He does not like to talk in front of people. That's his first thing he talks to God about. I can't talk to Pharaoh. Oh gosh, what if he had lived in Pharaoh? I'd never thought of this before. If he lived in Pharaoh's court and they hung out together, oh yeah, I'll just go back and chat him up about letting the slaves go, right? And he tells God, no. I'm not going to do that. And he says, that's all right. Your brother Aaron will speak for you. So in all those scenes of Aaron and Pharaoh, the one that's talking to Pharaoh is not Moses. It's Aaron, his brother, who is his spokesperson. There's a theory that says that Moses lived his first 40 years in Egypt, the next 40 years with the Midianites, his final 40 years in the Exodus with the people. Now that's 120, that's a good long life, but it's symbolic of 40 years in the ancient world was considered a generation. It was considered a lifetime. So look at him, he lived 3 lifetimes. 3 separate, complete experiences. I think that's a cool image. So we also know in the biblical text coming up is that when it's time to go back, God tells him, the people who want to kill you in Egypt are dead. The Pharaoh who kicked you out is no longer there. So again, what is this relationship between Moses and the Pharaoh that doesn't exist, and we skip over the people that are important in his life? Also, the cultural influences, I kind of mentioned that there a second ago. Think about learning all you can from the Egyptian culture, then learning all you can from the Midianite culture, then learning all you can from his own people, and that ethnicity, the Hebrew people. What a rich life that would have been. So again, I'm not being critical of the storytellers, because I think they're telling us something that we want to hear and skipping over things that we don't really want to know about. Let's look at those things some more. Why? Again, I don't know why. So we were all saddened to hear of the death of Chadwick Boseman Friday at the age of 43, colon cancer. Get your colonoscopy, right? 43 years old, best known for his role recently as King T'Challa in the Black Panther. But I went and looked at his other films, and wow, really cool. It had kind of a knack for playing historical characters. In recent years, he's depicted James Brown, Jackie Robinson. So ironic that he died on the day that the Major League Baseball was wearing their 43 jerseys. He played Jackie Robinson, the first black player in Major League Baseball, in the movie 43. And then a movie about Thurgood Marshall. So I decided to watch that one because I didn't know that story. And Thurgood Marshall's name has come up several times in different places for me, and I thought I need to learn who this person was. Thurgood Marshall is known for being the first black Supreme Court justice in the late 1960s. He also is the lawyer who argued Brown versus the Board of Education in front of the Supreme Court. He argued many civil rights cases in front of the Supreme Court and in other venues for decades. And the movie Marshall, starring Chadwick Boseman, happens in 1941. 1941. Thurgood Marshall plays an attorney who's working for the NAACP, and he travels around the country. In fact, he's the only attorney working for the NAACP. He travels around the country focusing on court cases where they believe that people are innocent and they're being tried simply because of their ethnicity, because of being black. So the 1941 case is against Joseph Spell. It's in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It's the case of a chauffeur attacking the white woman who is his employer and her husband. And I won't get into the details of that. You imagine it is mature themes, and there's a little language in it. I would encourage you to read it, to watch the movie. Don't not for your kids probably, but it's it's done very well, very tastefully. But the movie, the thing that struck me was that there's a partnership here too. So Thurgood Marshall is the attorney who comes in from the outside. He's got some notoriety. He's been trying cases around the country. He's a very eloquent, very powerful man. But he's not allowed to try a case in the state of Connecticut because he's not, I don't know the details of that stuff, but he's not past the bar, so there has to be a local attorney. The local attorney's name is Samuel Friedman. This is historically accurate, co-counsel with Thurgood Marshall. Now in the movie, he is depicted as a bumbling lawyer who handles insurance claims. And they actually have a moment where they talk about Moses and Aaron. And the judge tells Thurgood Marshall in the movie, "You may not speak in my courtroom. You just have to sit there and be quiet." And the two of them have this discussion about how I will be your Aaron and I will be your Moses, and I'll sit here next to you and I'll write you notes and I'll tell you what to say, and then he'll say it. Did I mention that Samuel Friedman was Jewish? So here we have a Jewish attorney and a black attorney in 1941 trying a case against a black man who has been, as we find out later, charged for a crime he did not commit. So anyway, it's a pretty good movie. Important themes and lessons, but the truth of the matter is that Samuel Friedman was not Aaron to Moses. Samuel Friedman was a powerful attorney who already had tried cases like this and would go on to try many more cases like this. And in fact, Thurgood Marshall sat next to him and listened and watched as this powerful Jewish attorney did the case and won the case against Joseph Spell in 1941. And sorry, spoiler, they win. Okay, it wouldn't be a great movie if they lost, right? But it is a good movie. I encourage you to watch it. But again, why do we want Thurgood Marshall? I guess it wouldn't be a very good movie about Thurgood Marshall if he just showed up and sat there, right? I only have 4 lines in this movie. It's okay, Chadwick, we're going to pay you $7 million. Why do we, again, want our heroes? Why do we want our superheroes like King T'Challa and Moses and Thurgood Marshall? Why do we want them to be bigger than life with gifts and abilities far beyond our comprehension? Perhaps if we see them just as regular people responding to extraordinary circumstances with the regular gifts that they were given, we might be compelled to do the same thing. Perhaps we feel guilty because we have not done with our regular gifts, with our normal people abilities, the things that people who have done extraordinary things have done. None of them have a magic cape, right? There is no Superman. There is no gifts from some other place that allow people to do the things they do. So who does Moses talk to most in the book of Exodus? In the book of Exodus, he hardly speaks to Pharaoh at all except when they challenge each other. He talks to Aaron a little bit. Talks to God all the time. God talks to him. Who has the greatest influence on his life in the book of Exodus? Who gives him guidance and assurance and confidence? Who gives him the power and abilities far beyond what he thought he possessed? Well, that's God. There's sections of the book of Exodus where it says over and over and over, "Then the Lord said to Moses," Then the Lord said to Moses. Then the Lord said to Moses, and Moses talks back. Actually, sometimes they argue about things, and sometimes Moses wins. We'll look at some more of those stories as we go along. But this is a relationship. There is a trust and a deep relationship that makes all these things possible. So maybe, just maybe, if you want to be more like Moses, you don't have to have a dramatic story about being nearly drowned in the river. You don't have to be raised as royalty. You don't have to do heroic things. You don't have to get banished or adopted by new families or cultures. You don't have to do miracles or save an entire nation of people. Maybe all you really need to do is talk to God a lot. Maybe all you need to do is trust in God, to trust that God will help you in difficult circumstances, that God will help you make difficult decisions, that God will help you face challenging obstacles. And then see what miracles happen in your life and in the lives of the people around you. Thanks be to God, amen. It wasn't going to be windy, but now it is. One of the earliest symbols of the Christian church is the fish, right? So we see the Jesus fish on the back of people's cars, the very simple outline. That comes from what we believe was the tradition of the early church when they were being persecuted, that it was a sign to tell that someone was a Christian. If you were talking to them, you might take your finger and write in the dirt half of that arc shape. And if the person was a Christian, they would know to do the opposing arc shape, you know what I'm talking about? To create the fish. So that's one story. Seems to be historically accurate. What we do know for sure from writings and artwork and things is that early on, the word fish in Greek became a symbol for Christians as well. The Greek word for fish is ichthus. Ichthus. And in Greek, Jesus begins with an I, because they don't have a Y sound, right? Jesus' name was Yeshua, and Greek doesn't have a letter for that. So they spell Y-I-E, E-A, Iesu. So ichthus starts with I, and ichthus stood for Ichthus Christos Theos Huios Sozo, Jesus Christ, God's Son, Savior. That's where the Jesus fish comes from. Is that early tradition of the church, and also all the stories about fish that we have in the Bible. We had goldfish crackers for communion last week, and we were all real excited about it. So we're going to keep doing that. I've given you some theological background for that now, so you can discuss this with your friends and family. We're fun. We wear Hawaiian shirts and helmets to church, and we have fish crackers, and we know that fish crackers have significance to us. It should remind us that the meal that Jesus shared with his disciples that night was not a gourmet meal. They were actually eating the unleavened bread that had come from the tradition of the story of the Exodus. That bread would have cracked open. It would have been like a cracker. When Jesus broke the bread, it was not a big fluffy loaf of white bread. It would have cracked. They would have made noise as they chewed that bread together. It was a simple meal of bread and wine that he shared with them. He shared his life with them. While they were eating, Jesus took bread, he blessed it, broke it, and gave it to the disciples and said, "Take and eat. This is my body." He took a cup, gave thanks, and gave it to them, saying, "Drink from this, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many, so that their sins may be forgiven." The table is prepared for you. Please come forward as you are ready. Today is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Yesterday was the day that the Lord had made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Tomorrow is the day that the Lord will make. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Go in peace this day with the faith of Moses, that you, in normal and everyday circumstances, may talk and listen to God and trust to do the things that you are called to do in your life. This is our prayer. Go in peace. Amen.